the mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank, and like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony, air quotes nippy, Ames.
And this is A Little Bit Culty, a podcast about what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real cult stories told directly by the people who lived through them.
Because we want you to learn a few things we've had to learn the hard way.
Like, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you're already prime recruitment material.
You might even already be in a cult.
Oops. You better keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Season 6 of A Little Bit Culty.
Hey everyone, it's another remix by request. You guys like these? This one is it is an anti-MLM 101 starter kit with some of our favorite MLM busters.
We're going to start with Roberta Blevins, who you may know as a fan fave from the Amazon Prime series Lula Rich, or from her rockin' good time podcast, Life After MLM, where she explores the dangers of multi-level marketing through the eyes of the victims and survivors.
She's got some serious street cred in the anti-MLM domain for sure. As a trainer with LuLaRoe, Roberta had a team of 75 women under her and made over $65,000 in bonuses alone. When she came to the conclusion that it was a rigged, losing game, she didn't just leave the business. She testified in the Washington State versus LuLaRoe pyramid scheme lawsuit as a witness for the state. It's all a really interesting story. Lula Rich is worth a watch in case you haven't seen it.
So here's a segment from our episode with her. You can hear the whole thing in full episode format from Season 2 of A Little Bit Culty. Just peep our show notes for that link.
But for now, keep listening, because right after her, we'll have an author of Hey Hun, Emily Lynn Paulson, as well as the anti-MLM expert, Doug Brooks.
So just in case you're thinking about selling something for an MLM, don't give them your credit card info until you've listened to this remix of A Little Bit Culty in the key of Big Bad MLMs. Here's Roberta Blevins.
My first question is, do they make leggings for men?
You know what? Not specifically, but there are some Lula bros that love to wear their tight pants. And there are some YouTube videos of them dancing to that Jimmy Fallon song in LuLaRoe leggings. And it is so Lula cringe is what I've been calling it.
Oh, there's Lulu language, like Lulu bro, Lulu cringe. I want to know all the language. And just so you know,
you have to have that culty language. Of course you
This episode is going to come after an episode that's all about cult language and how language is used to recruit, to retain, to gaslight, to manipulate, all that stuff. So this is, for our audience, this is going to be so rich in
amazing
nuggets of goodness. So yeah, we have a lot of questions for you, and just so you know, our general format for people who get out of anything MLM, cults, I mean, really in our mind it's the same thing at this point, is, you know, how did you get in? What did you think you were getting into? How did you get out? What woke you up? And how are you healing? So that's the overall structure.
Yeah.
And in that, we're wanting to know, and for our audience, show, you know, what happened to you so that they can hear about it and go, oh, that's not right. And that's abusive. And that's, I mean, people write to us and say, Lulu Rich and what was exposed is definitely a little bit culty, but why? Like, what specifically about it? What was the processes that were used that make it not healthy? And so that people can see that. And that's our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. In short, it's turning your story into content and wisdom. So
Absolutely.
does that make sense? And I don't know where you are in the process. That's one of the things Sarah and I were discussing. We were like, well, let's figure out where she is in the process of understanding what she's looking at.
Yeah, no, I'm so in it. I'm there, you know.
And that's the education.
Oh yeah.
Right.
On my podcast, I have an MLM survivors podcast, and very similar to this, where how did you get in? What happened? What opened your eyes? And what are you doing now? Kind of thing. It's the same format, but it's just MLM. And we talk about all different kinds of MLMs and all different kinds of things. And we break it down. You know, people will tell me things. I'm like, that's a cult tactic. And here it is in the bite model, and this is what it is, and this is what it's used for, and this is why they're doing it. And sometimes we have these episodes where the guests are like, oh my God. And I'm like, I know, right? It's crazy. And they're just like, I never thought about it like that. I said, I know, right? And I like to say, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it anymore. It's like the emperor with his clothes, right? You finally look up and you're like, wait a second, he's naked.
You know what's ironic about that is that Keith used to tell that story all the time. And there was even a company that he created with the acronym of the emperor had new clothes. Did you know about that, Nippy?
I knew a little bit about it. I think it was a hypothesis, right? It wasn't really.
Yeah, he just loved to do what he was talking about, as all sociopaths apparently love to do. We've learned since.
Of course.
But before we get into all that, and we're hoping that our listeners will have watched Lulu Rich by the time they hear this. But for those who don't know your story, and I'm sure you're sick of talking about it, as am I, but can you give us like the cliff notes of basically when you signed up for this, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you thought you were signing up for? What did you think you were getting into?
Yeah. So I was introduced to LuLaRoe by a mom friend in a Facebook group that I was in. She wasn't even selling them. She just was wearing them. And she shared a picture that was cute. And I said, oh, those are kind of cute. I've never seen those leggings before. And being a stay-at-home mom at the time with a young daughter, I was looking for comfortable things that were cute, you know? So she's like, oh, it's this company. So I did my research. I looked into it. I couldn't find anything. I don't know if they were suppressing the information at that point or nothing was bad enough that people were like actually reporting it at that point. But I remember Googling, like, is LuLaRoe a scam? Is LuLaRoe a pyramid scheme? And I couldn't find anything. And I was like, okay. And the way that they had it, it seemed a little different than the way that other MLMs were structured. And it seemed just different enough that maybe it wasn't, you know, as bad as all the other ones. So against my worst judgment.
So you were aware at the time about MLMs and that some of them were scammy or whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. But I didn't realize that it was the business structure itself. I thought that it was just, I just shouldn't be selling weight loss pills. I should be selling colorful, buttery crotch pants instead. Like, that's just more my vibe. Mm-hmm. It's the same. It's the same. It doesn't matter what carrot they're dangling or what bauble is, you know, being displayed. They're all the same. But at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, I thought I was going to be selling leggings in my living room. I joined a couple Facebook groups just to see how everything was going. They were selling so fast. I'd go in there, I'd be 10 minutes late and half of it would be sold out already. And I'm like, what is happening? Yeah. This is like Beanie Babies again. Like, you just couldn't get them. And I remember, like, I just wanted black leggings. I think it took me 3 weeks to find somebody that had a pair of black leggings to buy.
Were they really that amazing? Were they really that comfortable?
I mean, nothing more comfortable than you can find, like the soft, fuzzy ones you get at Walmart for like $3.88.
Wow.
I mean, they're not any different. They're very, very similar.
They created a buzz about it. It's kind of like, you know, you see it in like Pokemon cards or baseball cards or stuff like that. They created the scarcity. And there's a dopamine. There's a dopamine hit you get from that.
A dopamine addiction. Like, ooh.
So women were buying multiple leggings.
Oh my God. It was insane. I was just watching it fly off the shelves and I'm just like, I got to get on this. Like, this just seems so easy. Mm-hmm. This is such a great thing for me to be doing when my daughter's asleep or having a nap or whatever. I can just sell leggings. Like, how hard is it to take pictures, post them on Facebook? I wasn't even thinking about the dresses and the skirts. And I just thought leggings, so easy. Mm-hmm. But when I finally joined LuLaRoe and onboarded, they didn't even have leggings. They were sold out. That should have been another red flag. It really should have. I should have been like, what?
When did you first get in, like on board, as it's called?
Right.
For our listeners, it's akin to signing up or being enrolled or whatever.
Accepted into the family of LuLaRoe.
Right.
You were onboarded and then there's a moment in the doc where like, I'm in a fucking cult. where, how long was it between your onboard and your, oh my God, I'm in a fucking cult moment?
So the grooming started in October of 2015. I signed the papers in February of 2016. I had to wait 6 weeks to join because the queue, there were so many people wanting to join, FOMO, so many people that need to get on this. You have to wait 6 weeks. But while you're doing this, join this other group called the Q, like it was called the Q. So you'd be in the queue and you join these Q groups. You were called QBs. And all these little QBs, again, with the cult language, all these little QBs will be talking to each other. What did you get? Oh, I got this printer. Oh, what printer is that? Well, we like literally sold Amazon out of thermal printers. Like you could not find a thermal printer.
What's a thermal printer?
It's a printer that uses heat on like a label. So instead of using ink, it would just use heat. So you just have to buy these heat labels like you would get in a receipt,
I've seen those.
like in a fast food restaurant or something.
What would you use them
for our packages, for when you're shipping packages out, right? So you need this thermal printer. Oh, okay. So we're buying all these. You need these racks. These are the best racks. We're selling out Amazon on racks, on hangers, on thermal printers to get all of this stuff to open up our own boutiques, right?
This is before you're even onboarded. Let me ask you something though.
Before I'm even onboarded.
The grooming started. I know what that means. And we're trying to be really careful with our language, just so you know, after our language episode with Amanda Montell, who wrote Cultish, which I highly recommend. And she does a whole thing on MLMs and the structures that are in place that keep them so toxic, so little side note, little plug for her book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good. So we're trying to be careful with the words like grooming and brainwashing and cult, even like they're just very hyperbolic words and they lose a lot of nuance. So we're trying, when you say grooming, what do you mean by that? What specifically were they doing to prepare you for what was about to come? And I'm just going to put this in, normalize the abuses that were about to take place.
Okay, that's actually perfect. Normalizing the abuse, right? We already start in a deficit, right? We're starting in a deficit. We're out of leggings. Sorry. We're out of things. You're going to have to wait 6 weeks. Just be patient with us. We love you. We're a baby company. We're working out the kinks. You're part of this. You're part of us. We love you so much. You're going to have to wait 6 weeks though. So here's a group to join with a bunch of other people. So you normalize the fact that there's scarcity. It's so busy. It's so much. Like they're going to run out. They're so popular. Everybody loves them so much. They just can't keep up with the demand. It's so incredible. So you're like, oh yeah, of course. So that was some sort of like preparing us for scarcity, always with the assume innocence. That was something that was said constantly, assume innocence, because we would say, clearly you're doing this intentionally. Assume innocence. It is not like that at all.
So you weren't allowed to call out something negative.
Never.
You had to assume that they had good intentions. They would never have bad intentions.
Never.
Well, also assume innocence would fall into the category of a thought-stopping cliche.
Absolutely.
So we're going to plug Amanda Montell's book because she did such a good job on language. A thought-stopping cliche is what you see in a lot of these groups where you'll have a question about something and it'll be something like,
well, in your case, probably it is what it is. What it is.
It is what it is.
What it is. It is what it is.
Or assume innocence.
Assume innocence. And so that interrupts your questioning nature, your skepticism, and stifles it. Assume innocence. Oh, okay, maybe it's me. Maybe it's, whatever.
I saw it a lot in the doc,
a lot of places.
There's so many things as similarities I saw, but we'll get to that in a second. So you get onboarded. You've been set up to feel, it sounds like you've been love bombed. You feel excited to be part of a community. You're feeling really enthusiastic about what your income potential and changing your current situation. So they're dangling possibilities of endless dreams and everything coming to fruition in this company. And it's the only way to get there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Based on the fact that Deanne sold $20,000 worth of skirts out of the trunk of her car, which is a lot of skirts to hand make, but that's the math on that is logical.
They were definitely not handmade. I don't know how many were. They did make a few. They used to sit around the table, and actually Deanne's sister, Diane, was involved and then edged out, and Mark was brought in. And then, so there's some weird stuff there too.
At this point, are you encouraged to onboard as well? Or you can't onboard until you've been on?
Yes, I can 100% take people underneath me if I'd like. In fact, I had one, my really good friend. She was asking me, what is all this stuff you're talking about? I said, I think I'm going to join. It looks really good. And she started doing research and she came to me and she's like, I think I want to join too. I said, I literally joined 2 days ago. She's like, can I join underneath you? I said, yeah, here's my link. I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
And one of my very good friends joined right underneath me, also not knowing anything. And we rode the Q wave together. And so because I had someone underneath me, as soon as she onboarded, like 4 or 5 days after I did, I got a bonus almost instantly because I had that person underneath me. And I'm not the only person that was encouraged to recruit while in the queue. And I don't know if that's intentional. Like, look, you onboarded and you immediately got a bonus. See, it works. It's amazing. Or what? Because it seems silly if it's meant to be a real business and it's meant to be the wholesaler like they claim. Why the emphasis of getting so many people on that don't know what they're doing without being put underneath the right people? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's not silly just to make you feel better, because I also did something very similar when I brought somebody in with me. And when I graduated from my 5-day, I had an extra stripe on my sash. and that was super motivating. A stripe on my sash is motivating. So I can understand why a bonus check would be motivating.
Yeah. And like the feeling you get with the stripe, like I felt that when I got my watch. And it felt like wearing it and being like, everybody will know how serious I am now because they'll see me wearing this and they'll just know that I'm more serious than someone that doesn't have it. And that's not what that means at all. But that's what they make you believe it means.
I get it. I was so internally satisfied by watching the doc, because it was like, oh, this is another way for people to understand what motivates people who want to go up the ranks. And there were, again, so many similarities, but specifically when I saw that watch, I mean, I would have much preferred to have a watch as a bonus than when I was striving to get my orange sash and then my green sash. But my green sash meant so much to me because people knew that I was like a real leader. I ran multiple businesses and all the things that the sash represented. So I understand what that watch meant to you.
You guys got some bling.
I think actually Nexium might have survived if they'd given us watches instead of sashes. Don't you think that?
No, I'd have sold mine.
Also, quick ironic tidbit. The last time I saw Nancy Salzman, she gave me a gold strap for my Apple Watch. She gave me like a very fancy blingy gold watch, which I'm actually wearing in the picture that's on the cover of the New York Times when we expose them. I put that on purpose as a little fuck you,
I love it.
I still got the watch, so I have my watch story. I got my watch from Nancy. Anyway, digress. So you get onboarded, you're with your friend, and there was a period of the good years, right? Where you're making good money. You think that you're helping other women. Tell me about that little chunk.
In the very beginning, that's really what it felt like. Like so many people were coming in and so many people were interested in it. It was such an easy way. It was an easy way to make money. But of course, that's how all MLMs are in the beginning, that's just how they are. So my experience was not unique in any way other than that I was closer to the top because I got in earlier. But from a non-pyramid standpoint, it really felt like I was helping women with social media, getting their name out there, like learning how to market themselves, learning how to, do business things. I hate to call MLMs businesses because they're not.
But you need business skills to do.
But business skills, and it was interesting to watch people grow and like their successes were my successes and not in a monetary way, although it was. But I felt proud of these women. Like, oh my God, like, look what you did. That's incredible. Like you had a huge sale or you did this thing or look how you put yourself out there. You were so shy before. So that was another thing. Like I felt like we were a family and we were changing and we were growing and we were being better together. And it felt so incredible. It felt so incredible. It was the longing that I had for that community when you're younger in your 20s, before you're married and you have kids. It's that gap between that and when your children are of an age where people actually want to hang out with you. And so not having that community because I was, at home with my daughter and then finding it online. And it was so motivating, so much love bombing. So you're a rock star. You're amazing. Oh, you know how to do social media. We've never had anybody like that on our team. You'd be such an asset. You could help us so much. Things like that triggered feelings that I had inside me that I already felt like I'm worth this. I'm good. I'm smart. These are the things that I was feeling. And I didn't feel like I was getting it from the outside source because I was so isolated with my daughter and she, thought I was awesome, but it's different.
It's different when you have a group of people that are making you feel special, right?
Yeah. And meeting these women and they're like, oh my God, you're amazing. And then doing the things they tell me to do and having it work and then being like, oh my God, they're right. This is real. And then seeing it with my own eyes and being able to perpetuate that with other people but it's not real.
Before you go to that, then them using your success to show other people that it's possible, right?
Absolutely.
And say, look, she can do it. You can do it. The whole rags to riches.
Yeah. I wasn't at the top of the pyramid and I wasn't at the bottom of the pyramid. I was right in the middle. I call it like floating in like oh God, what do I use?
Well, what rank was it?
I was a trainer, but
Okay.
I was 2 people away and those people weren't in the queue waiting. So as soon as those people were to onboard, I would have been ranked up to a coach.
Okay.
But the mass exodus happened and everything started to crumble. And that's when I started looking around and I was like, this is not sustainable. What is going on? Why are they making these horrible decisions? What is happening?
Right.
It didn't seem like a business. It seemed like a scam. And I didn't understand, like, if we want to do this, we should be doing that. But we're not doing that. We're doing this completely opposite, ridiculous thing that doesn't make any sense from any business standpoint at all. Why? And they're like, do you want to go on the cruise? And I was like, well, I didn't earn the cruise. No, I know, but you've been working so hard and your team is growing and you were just like, you just do so much for our team. And I just have an extra cruise. And I find out later they had many extra cruises, but I had an extra cruise and I wanted to gift it to you because I know how hard you've been working.
So you didn't earn the cruise, but they wanted to give it to you anyway at the time that everything was falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar.
Little tidbit. As we left and we like blew the whistle and we were like exposing things, they started promoting people who hadn't earned it. Yeah.
People who are our
friends who are still in.
They would target people who are going through a crisis. You're going through an internal crisis of, should I stay? Should I leave? And here's a present to keep you. You got bribed.
Yeah, 100%.
Did you go on the cruise?
I absolutely did. I should have listened to Lachey. It was a nightmare.
Really?
She's right.
Wait, Lachey is in the doc, right?
Yeah, she's the girl that says that she doesn't want to go on the cruise.
She's the one who said, I don't want to go on a cruise with a bunch of white people. I was like,
that's awesome. She was one of my favorite. You and her were my favorite people.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Oh, I love that she said that.
She's amazing.
Because I knew that's what she was thinking.
I should have listened.
So why was the cruise a nightmare?
Well, okay. So that year there were 2 cruises because there were so many people, even though I was given the cruise and I didn't qualify. It just doesn't make any sense, right? All of it doesn't make sense. It's just, they're all baubles and trinkets. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 boats. The first boat was 100% LuLaRoe. That was the absolute cult cruise. I believe that is the cruise where Deanne told everybody to get on their knees as a professional advice.
Oh, right. To please make sure their husbands were pleased.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the cruise that was said. It's been said multiple times, but that was, I think, the one that most people heard it at. And then there was a second cruise that happened like 2 months later. And that's the one that I got invited to. And I literally got invited like 3 or 4 weeks before it happened. So it was a lot of scrambling to get everything fixed. But again, I think that's intentional. Like, we'll give it to you, but you have, and I remember she was like, I have this cruise, but I have to hear back by 5 o'clock today, or I have to give it to somebody else. And I remember calling in my husband at the time and I'm like, do you want to go on this cruise? He's like, wait, what? I was like, I mean, we have to, I'm just going to tell her yes. Okay. We'll just figure it out. And he's like, okay.
Did you have to pay to go on the cruise?
The room was free. The cruise, like the cabin was free. Everything else I had to pay for. Okay. So, I mean, it's all inclusive if you buy a cruise, but just like the basic package. But I live in San Diego and the cruise went out of Florida. So I had to fly to Florida. And then the cruise port is like an hour and a half outside of the airport. So then I had to get an Uber, but the cruise left in the morning. So I had to fly out the night before and then get an Uber to the hotel and then stay at a hotel and then get in the morning and take another Uber. I mean, we were probably already at $1,000 just to get to Florida with all of that.
That chaps my ass.
And now a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
That was Roberta Blevins talking about her experience in the leggy, lawsuit-ridden world of LuLaRoe, a notorious MLM. And our next clip is from another former MLM mama who hasn't officially named the company she sold for, but she has written a tell-all memoir that is a must-read. Emily Lynn Paulson chronicled her experience in the book Hey Hun, Sales, Sisterhood, Supremacy, and Other Lies Behind Multi-Level Marketing. And she joined us earlier this year to talk about that culty ride she was on. Be sure to listen to our full episode with her, that links in the show notes, and check out her book, informative, readable, and bingeable. Well, listen, we're obviously big fans of the book, and we'll be talking a lot about that throughout the podcast. But for those who are new to the scene here, or maybe have been living under a rock and don't know what an MLM is, I mean, I actually still find that some people, they don't know the term MLM. Like they have friends who do it, but they don't know that's what it is. You want to give us a little cliff notes for the 12 people on the listening who are listening who don't know what it is?
Yeah. So I will say everybody knows what an MLM is, whether they know or not. Right? So it's basically an unsalaried workforce who has to pay into a company to promote products that they don't get paid for unless someone actually buys them. So it's, what you see on social media is be your own boss. I've got my own business, my own small business. And that's the exact opposite of what it is. It's a huge corporation and they make their money by collecting people. They have, people buy a business kit, and then the money isn't made selling products. The money is made by then getting more people to buy the business kit and buy into the business. And you don't own your own business. You are just an unpaid contract worker. And so the way multi-level marketing makes so much money is that once you buy the business kit, they have your money. You never have to do anything. And that's how these corporations thrive. They literally thrive because so many people fail. And they have a 99.7 failure rate across the board, meaning people who purchase lose money immediately. You're already in the negative. And most people never actually turn a profit.
Don't you wish you'd known all that when Becky invited you to have a drink?
I had, and I describe this in the book too, is I had an initial I think we all have that little, oh God, it's one of those things. It's one of those things you see on social media. And at that time it was really booming. 2013, 2014, it's like you saw MLMs a lot. And it was, again, it's like you wouldn't know it was an MLM. It's just like, oh, so-and-so has a skincare business. So-and-so has a supplement business. So-and-so is selling leggings. It's all this crap all the time, right? And you might not know what it meant at the time. But for me, I was like, ooh, do I want to be that person? But what got me was I did see that she'd gone on some fun trips. She was seemingly earning money. She was seemingly doing really well and having a lot of fun. And when I met with her, there were a bunch of people there. And it was like, oh, so whether someone had said to me, oh, 99.7% of people fail, I would have been like, but look, right? It was that cognitive dissonance of, but I see that she, someone I know, who I trust, is doing well. And why would she lead me astray? So I don't know if knowing that, because I could have looked it up anywhere. Again, most of these statistics that I talk about in the book, they're all readily available. It's all out there. And what keeps people stuck and continuing to enroll is that hope that maybe they can be the 0.3%.
So highly recommend the book and all the juicy details. Will you give us a little cliff notes of what hooked you in terms of, and I always find this so interesting, what was going on for you emotionally that was a draw and appealing in terms of being a mom and all that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that's the reason so many moms get roped in, is because I was looking for something at that time. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was at this point in my life where, we just had our last baby. We've got 5 kids and we were done having kids. And I knew that going back to the workforce was not in the cards for me because my husband had a demanding job. Childcare for 5 kids would have been just stupid. And I didn't know if I had any other options, but I was in that place, like I think a lot of women are in, where you just feel like you've lost your sense of self a little bit. So I didn't know there were any options out there for me. So when this was presented to me, I was like, wow, not only can I escape like tonight I can get out and actually put makeup on and clothes on and leave my kids behind and go out and meet her for drinks. But gosh, this is like the hope that I can do this all the time. It was just that need for something outside of myself, outside of my mom life, that I was really craving. And it was bundled in with this possibility of also earning money and trips. And so it was just the hope of something outside of my life at the time, where maybe I felt very overwhelmed. I felt underappreciated, like I think a lot of young moms do. I had a lot of hope that it could be the magic solution.
I was just noticing it's one of the consistencies that we saw in the leggings, Roberta Blevins one.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like there's fertile ground for moms in this.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It capitalizes on mom's capacity to network. Like there's a joke I have with like a lot of my male friends. I'll be like, all right, I'll talk to Sarah, you talk to your wife, and we'll figure out when we're going to meet next. And It's not a joke because they're the social coordinators. They do everything way more efficiently, and then reservations at this restaurant that night, and it's like, so it seems like there's an infrastructure and like already kind of natural there that's capitalized on.
Oh yeah, I mean the mental load is huge, and the ultimate issue here is that there aren't systems set up for women, right? There aren't. Women's unpaid labor carries our entire economy. I could go on about the patriarchy and all that shit,
right.
But it's because there's a lack of resources. There's a lack of choices. And so when you're given something that, even if it's a really shitty choice, but it's there, it's going to look enticing. It's going to look like something. And I think MLMs do a really good job of not only filling those pain points of, being the mom who's at home, or being the woman who's, struggling with her career and balancing home life and all that stuff. You feel like you're doing something wrong no matter what. You stay home, if you work, either way, someone's going to say you're doing the wrong thing, right? But it also packages all the pain points you have just as a female. Like, hey, do you need to lose baby weight? Have you put on some pounds? Have you, whatever, how's your aging? How's your skin? Like, you got some wrinkles, got some crow's feet? I can fix that too. So it packages all of these pain points into one, which is what makes it so predatory. And then it's your friend inviting you, right? Or your kid's teacher, or it's these people in proximity to you that you feel like you can trust.
And they're in a group, and they wear cute little booties.
Yeah.
And cute little jeans and little hats. Like, I've seen pictures and I'm like, if I was super lonely and wanting friends, I would totally want to be part of that. Now I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, it does.
Super cringy. Yeah.
It's like when you're, changing diapers at 2 a.m. or whatever, like, and you see a picture pop up on Facebook of people on a cruise ship or whatever, it's going to draw you in no matter what they're selling.
Damn Facebook. I mean, more Instagram now, but that's a real pain point for a lot of people. It's just the inherent FOMO of like, look what everyone else is doing. And also, like, it's not real.
It's not real.
Sometimes there's some truth in like, okay, then maybe they're in, the Bahamas or whatever, but like, you don't know if they're happy or not. You don't know. That was actually one of the things in your book that I loved about like showing how what you posted on social media and that was going on all around you that really wasn't as glamorous, but nobody posts that because that would be stinking thinking.
Right. There's always a shred of truth in everything, right? Even like Nexium, there were some fundamental things that were very interesting and helpful and good. And yet there were also a lot of things that weren't. Like, that's what drew you in. Like, the system as a whole was very flawed. And so all of these things that you do, it's like, okay, yes, I did go on a trip, but it wasn't really free, and I got taxed on it, and I got drunk and all these other things happened, and like, it didn't really help. But what you saw on social media was very pretty, right? It's just not the whole story.
Tell us about some of the red flags, some of the most cringy things that happened along the way that you didn't really understand what you were looking at till now.
Looking back, obviously you can see a lot in hindsight, but even as I was going, even the first night when I signed up, I think it's not that you don't necessarily see red flags. Your intuition does pop up, but it's, again, what MLMs are really good at is squashing them immediately, squashing any of those thoughts and preempting any negative thoughts you're going to have before you have them. So they might say like, here's this script, for example, like here's the script of what you should post on social media. Well, your immediate reaction is like, ew, that's not even my words. That's gross. But they'll say to you, okay, this is going to feel weird. This is going to feel weird, but this is how you step out of your comfort zone. And this is how, so everything you do, then when you go into it and you're cold messaging someone and, you feel gross about it, you're like, oh, but they told me I was going to feel this way. So all of those intuitive feelings are squashed from the get-go. And that is really dangerous because then you just lower the bar, right? You're like, oh, then you're just sending cold messages all the time. It's no big deal. It's not that you've grown or become stronger or whatever. It's just you've squashed your intuition even more. And you have people all around you then who are doing the same thing. And so you're in this sea of people who are doing the same thing. And then it just adds to that cognitive dissonance of, well, they're doing it too. And I guess it's not so bad because now what you're doing is just normal. It's just normal, like business stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, you're in an echo chamber, so you're going to get those people to reinforce it regardless.
Yeah. And then they start with if people do say something negative, if someone does come back to you, they're just a hater. They don't want to see you succeed. It's very black and white. It's never well, maybe they just like you, but they just don't want to buy these products. Maybe they already have something they like. There's never any rational thought behind it. It's very much thought stopping. And, if you hear a no, it means not right now. It means they just don't understand yet. They don't understand the benefit that they're going to get out of it. So just keep working, keep talking to them. And if they say something negative about you, they just don't want to see you succeed. They're just jealous.
And we're going to play a little game shortly about how to handle some of those thought terminating cliches and MLM sales tactics. Before you do, I want to mention a point that really stuck out to me that I hadn't considered before, just in terms of how this is a society where we're taught that safe boundaries and no means no, especially as women, right? But here's a place where no does not mean no.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
There is a lot of internalized misogyny in MLMs. I mean, there's a lot of internalized misogyny in our world, right? And so I think it just comes with the territory when you're with a group of pretty much all white affluent women, that there's going to be internalized misogyny there. And so you have that as the foundation. And then you are told that you know best, this company, this system, this team, this whatever structure that you're in is the best. And it's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for everyone. Everyone should want to do this.
And we know best.
And we know best. And if they say no, it's because they're not educated. If they tell you it's a pyramid scheme, they're not educated. They just don't have the information. So don't feel bad about that. They just don't have the information. So then when you say, someone says no to you, someone says no to your opportunity, says no to your products, you automatically are like, okay, well, it's not that they don't want them. It's that they don't understand them. They don't understand this company. They don't understand these products, and they will. And so it's very cringy when, again, you're taught consent and you're taught the meaning of no in your life, but yet you're supposed to never take no for an answer in this one avenue. It's kind of a mind fuck,
When you say internalized misogyny, you mean amongst the women, enforcing it on the women?
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. And I saw this, many times, in different things that have happened. I described one situation in the book where, we were at a convention and something was slipped in her drink and she had to go to the hospital. Nothing happened to her, thank God. But, this group of women were like, oh, but did you see what she was wearing? And so that kind of stuff where, again, you're in this meritocracy where you are in charge of your own destiny and manifest your own, all that stuff, where it's your work that gets you to this place of success. And so if you do, God forbid, have, you're sexually assaulted or something, then the mindset is, well, it must have been something you did. That's how fucked up it is. And how could it not be when you are supposedly in charge of your own success and in charge of whatever happens to you? You control your own destiny. Well, why wouldn't you be in control of everything that goes on around you? And anything bad that happens to you must be your fault too.
The other red flag that I saw, and I'm pretty sure this happened in our MLM too, although I didn't really make the connections till I read your book, actually, was the religious undertones, or in your case, overtones, that it's also a bit of a mind fuck because it's all your own destiny, you're the boss babe, but it's also God.
Oh yeah. So
how does that work?
The religious manipulation. So again, if you don't succeed and you're a Christian, you're a faith-filled person, and this is God's plan for you. And you see so much of this in social media posts. Like, I'm so glad God put this company in my life. I'm so glad God blessed me with this and Jesus, all this stuff, right? So if you don't succeed, what does that say about how God feels about you? If you believe God put this in your life, that's a whole nother level, because obviously religion, like, believe whatever you want. Like, I'm fully like, whatever makes you happy, go to town. But religion in its worst manifestation can be very dangerous. We know that. And so you're adding that in to this business. And of course I use air quotes because it's not a business, but that's what everyone says. It just has all the markers of being potentially harmful, right? And you're going to take that on yourself that, oh, God must not love me very much because God wanted me to do this.
# not blessed.
Not blessed.
Yes. Indeed. And that was also very cringy throughout your book in the best way possible, as I was thinking about all the different people that I was overseeing and trying to help, but also, had my own intentions for them. And one of the big red flags that I saw is just your recognition of seeing how, like, you were helping them, but also, like, is it really what's best for them?
Right. And like you guys have said this many times too, is you really think you're doing the best. Nobody goes into these and they're like, well, I'm going to screw some people over. And then I'm going to, nobody goes into it like that. Everyone goes in thinking, I have hope that this could work for me. And I'm going to tell my friends about it because I have hope for them too. So yes, you're benefited from them joining, them buying products, whatever. But I really did want my friends to succeed. I really did want that. So then when you see that it's not actually happening, it's really hard because I'm like, okay, I've done all the things and I'm succeeding and they're not. Why? Well, I've been told it's because they're not doing the work. Well, I'm seeing it with my own eyes. It's really hard to reconcile that.
You made a comment in one of your interviews where in order for me to make money, other people had to lose money.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of like that's a hard thing to sit by and watch when you're trying to help these people and you're recognizing that you are doing well because they're doing that.
Right.
And that's the way the structure's set up. Talk about that. How was that process like?
It was a long process, a very long process. And once I finally got to that place, and, part of my story obviously is, going through alcohol addiction and part of my awakening was getting sober and seeing that a lot of the amends I had to make were around this business and a lot of the things I'd been saying I couldn't say anymore and kind of aligning myself back with my intuition before I joined. When I joined obviously I was drinking wine when I joined, right? So it was like my intuition came back online and I was able to understand like what I was doing on a deeper level. And yet still I was like, okay, but yet I've done all these things and I'm here, I'm succeeding. And, I want to help these people succeed. And so you see in the book, it's like I put a lot of money back into the company. I put a lot of money back into the people. And I thought for a long time, like, how can I sell people this and then not stay? How can I not stick it out with them? Even if they're not succeeding now, I still believed it was possible on some level. There was just cognitive dissonance for a long time until it was just so obvious that it was not going to happen. And it really was all of the people at the top, every convention, every year was the same people. It was the same people in the stands watching and hoping. It never changed. And if this opportunity is available for everybody, then you should see more people growing and more people rising to the top. It never happened. So it was a very slow process. And it was a slow process of knowing, like, what do I do now? Because then you have people saying to you, don't quit. The only way you fail is if you quit. You built this. Why would you walk away from this? And it's like, okay, well, I did. Like, and also when you're making money, it's like, how do you just walk away from it? Right. Once you get acclimated to, like, you make the money, you spend the money. And again, a lot of the money was going back into the system, these trips, the car, all this stuff, the clothes, the gifts for my team.
You got to pay to play.
Yeah. And so it was slowly untethering myself from, not spending as much. I wasn't putting as much back into the system. I really started distancing myself from it. And again, like asking myself, like, how much money is worth feeling this way?
Mm-hmm. Also, you hadn't done the math yet on the profit and loss statement, which I thought was really interesting.
Ooh. You're never encouraged to. You are never encouraged to do a profit loss statement, which should be like the first thing in a legitimate business. It would be the first thing any business coach would tell you to do. And, even in the companies, every MLM company has their own income disclosure statement, every single one. You can look it up yourself. They're all abysmal. They are all abysmal. And your uplines, the company will talk it away because they'll say, well, lots of people just join. They buy the kit because they like the products. They don't plan on selling. They don't plan on making a profit. But the thing is, the company knows, right? The company knows the number of people selling, the number of people buying, the number of people who are actively working and not working. So they could disclose those numbers. Why don't they? Again, because it's abysmal, because most people lose money. And it's really damaging because then there's this whole sunk cost fallacy, right? Of, you convince someone to join, like, hey, it's a bigger discount, whatever, just join. They'll be fine. Don't look behind the curtain. And then they're like, well, I already spent this much money. I'm already this invested in this way with these people with this money. And then it makes it even harder to leave.
This is the golden age of cult recovery. The more we speak up and share our stories, the more we realize we are not alone. Your voice and your story can empower others. This is Sarah, and I'm proud to be a founding collaborator of the #IGotOut movement. Learn more at igotout.org.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Wow, MLMs, would you say they suck?
I say they suck.
That's an understatement. So, okay, the Anti-MLM Starter Pack is really going well. It's a power hour.
We've heard from Roberta Blevins, Emily Lynn Paulson, two women who are crushing it, #BossBabe, all the ways that MLMs prey on people and exploit their hopes and wallets.
And for our last clip in this Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself MLM remix, we wanted to go all the way back to season 1 of A Little Bit Culty when we chatted with the wonderful Douglas Brooks.
None of these abuses of power get addressed or are made right without some help from legal eagles. And Doug Brooks is a real force for helping wage legal war on MLMs. He's an attorney who represents victims of deceptive schemes and knows too well that getting caught up in one can be hugely devastating.
For the better part of 3 decades, he's dedicated a significant portion of his practice to representing the victims of deceptive MLM schemes, including cases such as Webster vs. Omnitrition International, Rhodes vs. Consumer Bylines Incorporated, and Jacobs vs. Herbalife International. He's interviewed or deposed hundreds of participants in MLM schemes, reviewed tens of thousands of documents which were produced by MLM firms subject to confidentiality orders, and studied the compensation plans of scores of MLM companies.
Which is basically to say he knows his shit. And in case you missed that reference, Rhodes versus Consumers Byline Inc., Consumers Byline was Keith Raniere's brainchild before NXIVM. A little present for all you NXIVM nerds out there. So here's an excerpt from our chat with Doug Brooks. Listen up, people. Free legal insights from our real lawyer. Doug Brooks.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you on because we have a zillion questions for you. I hope you've had as much caffeine as we have.
Yeah, I've had my quota for the day.
Yeah.
When we decided to do this podcast and we put it out to the universe and our audience, what culty things do people want to know about that we could look at? So many people wrote us saying, would you please do an episode on MLMs? And I found that quite shocking, actually, more than any other culty thing. We got bombarded with it. And so many people told me things like personal stories of saying that they lost friends to different schemes and different groups and, trying to sell them stuff. Obviously I can see correlations right off the bat. But one of the things that we want to do with the podcast is to look at, what makes a healthy group that's dedicated to something, when does it turn south and become bad? Where's the deception? Where's the thing that makes it what we know as a cult, like a bad cult, versus a group of people excited about this similar cause? When our mutual friend Ken suggested that we speak, we were so excited because what we were looking for was somebody just like you as an expert in this field. And we have so many questions, but the first thing we wanted to ask was, how did you become a lawyer that became an expert in MLMs? Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I guess my first MLM cases I filed in the early 1990s. Before then, in the 80s, I had worked in a firm that specialized in franchise law. And we represented franchisees and distributors in traditional, organizations across the country. But I think it was 1992, one of my fellow lawyers in that firm, we branched off. We left that firm and we started our own firm. And we thought we would continue doing franchise cases. Since we had no money to pay the rent or anything like that, we shared office space with another firm in exchange for our time. And this was a firm that did a lot of class action work. And they had just filed a bunch of cases against multi-level marketing companies alleging that they were pyramid schemes. And they didn't quite know what to do with these cases. And then we felt, well, geez, with our background in franchise law, we ought to be able to figure out, these cases pretty easily. And then quickly found out that multi-level marketing is an entirely different animal. It's not really a product distribution system at all. It really is a recruiting game. We got further and further into it, and I took a particular interest in these cases. And I just sort of grew from there. I mean, I've done many, many different types of cases, class actions and other types of cases. It was these pyramid scheme cases that really sort of got my gut. And now that I'm sort of semi-retired, I spend most of my professional time on these cases, on arguing for better regulation and transparency in the industry, and representing consumer advocates pro bono who get threatened or sued by multi-level marketing companies. And I'm in the process of working with a group of folks that we're organizing a conference on the multi-level marketing industry that will be taking place April 30th and May 1st this year. We've got speakers lined up from the Federal Trade Commission, from international regulators, academics, consumer advocates, social media folks, all focused on the problems caused by this industry.
We'll make sure to include the information about that workshop in our show notes so people can check that out. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that you, and one of the reasons we were excited to speak to you as our MLM expert, is that you actually first heard about Keith Raniere, I'm understanding, through Consumers Byline, his venture before NXIVM. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that. And, obviously our podcast isn't just about NXIVM, but that's our background. So when we joined, as you know, 2005 for me and 2001 for Nippy, there wasn't a ton of bad press yet. But there were, if you knew how to dig around on the internet, which was also still pretty new back then, you could find some information about his original company called Consumers Byline International, which from what I was told was a buying group similar to something like Costco that could get goods to people at a much more discounted rate. In other words, Keith recognized that there was unethical behaviors in the market, and the market prices were so driven. And he also understood that so many people, I don't remember the number of Americans, were in debt, and he wanted to change that. He was such a noble, ethical man that he wanted to change the whole system. So he found a way to get goods at a discounted rate by buying it in bulk and then delivering it to his membership. There was also a recruitment of selling memberships to people. So the membership was really, really cheap. And then you had access to all these goods at a totally discounted rate. And that this was such a noble way of helping Americans that, of course, it got shut down by a number of attorney generals. And was it in Arkansas or something?
So the story was, this is when I went and asked him directly because my reservations were around what happened there. And the story they told us is that 22 district attorneys in 22 separate states filed a lawsuit against him, and that when he went out to Arkansas, that representatives from Walmart and someone related to the Clinton administration that he wouldn't say, he presented his not saying it as honorable. Like he didn't want to out the person. And he's like, they offered me $5 million to take my company outside their state and shut it down. And I wouldn't take the money. And when he told me that, and I went and checked with other people, they were like, yeah, apparently one of Clinton's lawyers in the Walmart family didn't want his model because it was going to put them out of business. And this is what they sold people that enrolled. They sold consumer bylines as a successful business.
Yeah. He said they used to tell us that he did, I don't remember the number, but like X billion amount, 50 million in his first year, second year of business or something. It did so well that it was a threat to capitalism, I guess.
No, it was a threat to people that wanted to control the market.
So that's what we were told. And Nippy thinks I'm crazy, but every time I do these podcasts, I'm also trying to reach the 20 remaining loyalists who haven't seen the full picture yet. Because if I had known what I think you're about to tell me, I would have run the other way. So what was CBI actually?
CBI was a cleverly designed pyramid scheme. It was portrayed as a multi-level marketing company in which the product was membership in a buying club. You would become a member of this buying club, and then you would also recruit other people to become members of the buying club. And the reason I call it clever gets into sort of the intricacies of how multi-level marketing companies are designed. We can get into that later, but the basic product, this buying club, we learned in discovery was created by an entirely separate company called, I think it was Purchase Power, Inc., a company that had been in business long before CBI. And they sold discount buying memberships to corporations that they could offer as, employee benefits or something like that. And the basic price was something like $20 a year. CBI sold those memberships for something like $200 a year. The idea that there was some benefit to joining CBI is a little questionable. That extra money, the $180 or so dollars, that went to basically to pay commissions to the people that joined. And following a typical multi-level marketing structure, most of those commissions went to the people at the very top, and very little went to everyone else. And I think at its peak, CBI had somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 members. And with an MLM, those numbers constantly fluctuate because people are constantly dropping out. I mean, the sort of grandiose notion that this is something that's going to upend capitalism, or the idea that Walmart would have paid some huge sum of money for Keith to walk away from the business is sort of ridiculous. Certainly nothing like that came up in discovery. I've never heard that before. Really what happened in the case is that, we filed our complaint, I think it was 1992. The main defense that CBI raised was they had an arbitration clause in the distributor agreement. So this is a clause that says you can't sue us, you have to arbitrate, and you can't do it as a class action. And so that was their main defense. We had adequately alleged that they were a pyramid scheme. A pyramid scheme violates New York state public policy, and therefore the judge would not enforce a contract that violated public policy. Sort of a technical legal thing. CBI appealed that to the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and while that appeal was pending, the New York State Attorney General filed a complaint. And they sort of doffed their hat to us because they used some of the information or some of the allegations in our complaint. They modeled their complaint based in part on that. And essentially, they were able to shut CBI down. There had been a number of state actions against CBI before this, but they only affected their own states. Arkansas can only protect Arkansas consumers. But because CBI was located in New York was able to shut them down completely.
Such a different story than what we were told.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. There was a creative aspect to how it was designed, but it was basically the same model that MLM has followed since the 1950s.
I don't know if you know this, but Keith proudly in his teaching of sales shared that he did sell encyclopedias door to door and did do Amway and tried all the different models and had decided that MLMs were inherently unethical, which is why when I joined NXIVM and people would say, oh, it looks like a pyramid scheme or it's an MLM. And I talked to the leadership about that. They said it's not an MLM because MLMs are unethical and this system is not. So before I even get into that, can you very quickly define MLM versus pyramid scheme versus direct selling as best you can?
Direct selling is the easy one. Direct selling is person-to-person selling other than from a fixed retail location. You know, the old door-to-door salesman, the direct seller, sometimes he actually owns the stuff that he's selling, so he buys it from the company and then resells it to the customer. Sometimes he just writes up an order, like the encyclopedia salesman. He doesn't own the encyclopedia he's selling to you. He just writes up the order, and then the company delivers it to you and then pays him a commission. And maybe there's a regional manager who gets a piece of that commission. Maybe there's a zone manager who gets a smaller piece of that commission. But so there might be, you know, 2 or 3 levels of management that get a piece of that commission. But the guy that actually makes the sale gets the biggest cut.
Okay. And that's ethical.
That's ethical. Direct selling is as American as apple pie. It's been around for thousands of years. There's just nothing wrong with it. Multi-level marketing likes to portray itself as direct selling. But the way multi-level marketing works is when you become a distributor, you not only get the right to buy and sell the products that are advertised or marketed by this company, you also get the right to recruit other distributors. And you get the right to sell them the right to recruit other distributors, and on, so that you can recruit what they call a large downline of distributors below you. And every time one of those distributors buys a product from the company, you get a commission. So you could say, in one way, that MLM is a type of direct selling in which the distributors can recruit other distributors. Not to get too technical, I don't even think it really is direct selling at all, because the focus really is on recruiting. Every time you look at an MLM company, people are not making money by selling products. The people that are making lots of money are successful recruiters. So it really is a recruiting game.
So the distinction is as a distributor, I am not making money off my product. I'm making money off the effort of other people.
Yes. And the issue of a pyramid scheme is an arrangement where participants pay money for the right to recruit people and receive compensation that is not primarily related to retail sales. MLM companies very often are accused of being pyramid schemes. And certainly in my experience, essentially everyone that I've looked at has turned out to be a pyramid scheme, at least under that definition, because the emphasis is on recruiting. The people at the top are making a lot of money from recruiting.
Right.
The people at the bottom are constantly churning in and out, losing what they put into it. And the incentives of the compensation plan are all in favor of recruiting rather than retailing. And in order to earn commissions based on your downline, that downline that you recruited, you have to keep on buying stuff. Every MLM I've ever looked at, there is some kind of purchase qualification in order to earn commissions. If you interview an MLM company, they will swear on a stack of Bibles that they do not require purchases. But if you look at their comp plan, what you find is that, in effect, in order to really participate, in order to earn those commissions, you've got to buy stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, theoretically, you could just get in and not buy anything. And yeah, no one's going to hold a gun to your head and say you have to buy something. But in order to reap the benefits of being in the plan, you've got to buy stuff. And those purchases are the things that drives the success of the company. The longer you keep people in, the more people you recruit, the more successful the MLM is going to be.
So what I'm hearing you saying, pyramid scheme is synonymous for you with MLM to a degree.
Yeah, I don't want to go that far.
Okay.
What I'll say is everyone I've looked at so far.
Right. What I'm understanding for myself, because I agreed when people wrote to me that MLMs can be culty and the division of friendships are similar in terms of like having a friend in a cult is very similar to having a friend who's trying to sell you X, Y, and Z out of their garage, right? And the distinction I'm coming to terms with for myself is that and tell me if this is accurate, is that the cult that is destructive is destructive because there is a deception and there's a lie. And the deceptive lie that is also part of MLMs, that the ones that you've looked at, is that it's not true what they're saying. And what they're saying is you can make a lot of money, and they're promising financial freedom, and they're promising all these things that are actually very, very difficult, if not impossible, or only possible for the 1% at the top who are earning from the efforts of the 99% worker bees.
And you have it. I mean, and that's one of the sort of the tragic things about this is because people, they get involved and they start recruiting their friends and their family, turning those personal relationships into commercial relationships. And then they find out after a while that they're really not being successful. They're losing money. And not only are they losing money, but the people that they brought into it are losing money. So they not only have harmed themselves, they've harmed other people. They're not only victims, they're also perpetrators. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of one of the things that sets this apart from other types of consumer fraud is that the MLM process turns people into recruiters even before they really understand what they're getting into. I mean, one of the first things they have you do is make a list of all the people you know. And because you're going to be, you want to share this opportunity with them. This is such a wonderful thing. We are going to change the world and make it a better place. And it would be wrong not to share this with your friends and family.
And everything that you just said was also said to us.
In
right?
some shape or form.
In some shape or form in NXIVM as well. Like, as soon as you did the 5-day, like, wasn't this training amazing? And everyone's like, yeah, because they're all high off the experience. And then can you think of who else in your life would you want to share this program with? And we're all writing lists because not only, at least for me, was I 100% truthfully so enamored with the whole thing, and I did want to share it with everybody. But if you shared it with 3 people within, at the time it was 3 months, you got your entire tuition back.
Which was impossible.
I did it because I was such a good recruiter, which is something I've also come into terms with this whole debacle. And I don't say this proudly. It's part of my
well, your skill set was abused.
My skill set was abused, but when I say I was a star recruiter or whatever, however I'm portrayed in the media, I'm not saying that because I'm proud of it. I'm saying it because I'm trying to take ownership of it so I can own it, that I did that and learn from it and teach people why it's bad so that other people don't make the same mistake that I did. So that's largely why we're doing all of this, the podcast and everything.
Well, I mean, ultimately, this is all about abuses of power.
Yeah.
The through line with everything from we've talked to people in Scientology, we've talked to people, and what you're saying and other domains, it's always about abuses of power. And one of the things that's particularly interesting about this is is there a world where these types of companies can be ethical? Have any of them come close? What are they missing? It seems to me from what I've listened to in your work is that ultimately they don't, because the numbers you end up exceeding the number of people on planet in order to...
There's a term for that too, right? The concept that there will come a time where the recruitment pool will dry up, right?
I like to compare this to an issue with franchising. When I did franchise cases, one of the types of cases that we handled, we call them cannibalization cases. Those are cases where one franchise store is located too close to another store, so it has an impact. And one of my most famous franchise case was a case called Sheck versus Burger King, where I represented this Burger King franchisee, and Burger King opened a location that cut his sales. I forget what the percentage was. Basically, it made a profitable store into a loser. And we sued. The judge ultimately ruled that there's a covenant of good faith and fair dealing. So even though Burger King didn't grant protected territories, it didn't give Burger King the right to build a store anywhere it wanted if it was going to harm an existing franchisee. But the point of that is that franchisees in normal systems, distributors in normal systems, don't want there to be a lot of other distributors because that's competition. Ideally, you want to have an exclusive. And if you can't get an exclusive, you at least want a limit on the number of other distributors. With multi-level marketing, this gets turned on its head. The distributors are recruiting other distributors. And if you're in the business of retailing products, the last thing you want is a million other people that are selling the same thing at the same price to the same people. And that's what makes this thing impossible to work as a form of retailing, as a form of product distribution. Because in a viable distribution system, the company has to be happy, but the franchisee or the distributor has to be happy too. Everybody has to be able to have a reasonable chance of making a profit. But with MLM, you really can't make money retailing because you've got all these other people out there who are selling the same thing. You could have a perfectly wonderful product, and some of them are and some of them aren't. If there's a million other people out there selling the same thing, maybe you're going to be selling it at cost, maybe you're going to be selling at a loss, but you're not going to be able to make the kind of profits that you need to have a functional business. And if you look at any MLM, what you see is over and over again, the people at the top, the people that are marching out onto the stage and talking about all the money that they're making, the money that they're making is commissions from their downline. They're not making a lot of money retailing the product. So again, I apologize if I've gone off on that.
No, you actually just reminded me that it's true. Where I ran the center in Vancouver, as you know, and that was a huge problem because it's a small community here, and ultimately people would hear about NXIVM, and there'd be fights over who was going to be the sponsor for somebody because you had to fill out on your form when you're signing up for a 5-day. All your information, and you have to say who is responsible for you coming. And someone would come to me and be like, well, I heard about it from this person. I met them on set, and I heard about it from that person at a party. But ultimately, I came to your intro, Sarah, and I heard it from you. But I wouldn't take credit because that was my job to put on info nights, right? So I have to figure out, well, who told you about it? And then people would fight over people. Well, I told them about it first, but the other person convinced them to sign up and got them to sign the paperwork. It was that kind of crazy dynamics that was so toxic. I feel like, and this is something that I brought up with you on the phone when I first introduced myself to you, that I feel like I have to say, and I'm hesitant to say it, but I feel like I have to, that I was in an MLM before I even got into NXIVM. And the story behind that is that when I was in university in the 90s, somebody very close to me had success with an MLM and put me in their downline so that when I came out of university, I'd have another stream of income. And so when I came out of it, I was like, what's this? And took the products and enjoyed the products and didn't do much with it till I needed a side hustle to my acting. And I gave it a go. And I didn't get very far. I don't think I got past the first, the different levels that you have to go up to be successful in an MLM. I liked the product. I did not enjoy the recruitment of other people and to get them into the business. And in fact, put a very large strain on one of my very best friends' relationship because I brought her in and it really wasn't in line with who she was. And I think we've since mended, but wow, that was a really painful juncture for us. But it did teach me a lot about kind of basics in regards to some of the skills that people need to be successful in an MLM in terms of follow-up and the hustle but ultimately, what I have had to come to terms with both that company, which I'm going to not mention because I still have family and friends involved in it. And I don't want to cause more pain, but hopefully maybe they'll listen to this and reevaluate things, I hope. But I had to come to terms with the grossest part and why I will never, ever, ever join anything like this ever again is that every person you meet is potentially a recruit. You sit beside somebody on the plane and you're not just casually getting to know them. You are trying to elicit information about them so that you can sell them a product. So for me with NXIVM, all the hesitations I had about that, and this is what we were then trained to do with other people is EM them away from that yucky feeling. Like if you felt uncomfortable about approaching somebody or recruiting somebody, it was just a fear, just something you had to get over. And I would present that to a coach, and then I'd get EM'd.
The term you just said, EM, what's that?
So an EM is when it was basically the therapeutic process that Keith apparently invented, which I've since learned that he didn't. But it's essentially bringing something to a facilitator that you feel uncomfortable with. Could be anything from like, anytime somebody gives me feedback, what an EM was designed to do is to overcome an issue.
I think that's the congruency with what he's saying, because in what I've listened to Douglas say is it always comes back to your fault for not being able to grow it. And an EM was basically acknowledgement of you going to someone, hey, it's my issue that I can't do this. And the organization was going to help us with that, in short, right?
There's 2 points there. One is with a point that Nippy just made, which is, I've seen that in every MLM. It's you're trained really from the get-go. They tell you, well, this business is not for everyone, and not everyone succeeds. And if you don't follow the plan, you're not going to do good. And then, of course, when you do fail, you know that it's your fault.
It's your issue.
It's not because there aren't enough people on the planet. It's not because you can't make money retailing. It's not because the comp plan is weighted towards the top. It's because some failing on your part. But the other thing, the reason I asked the question to begin with is that this term EM, this is one of the features of MLMs, and I think of cults also, is this whole language, these jargon, this terminology that's developed so that you become this little insular group where only people who are insiders know certain terms, and when you first join, you hear people using these terms and you're not even sure what they're talking about, and you have to be taught what these things are. And it's one way of sort of isolating people in group versus out of group.
Like what you hear, do you? Give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Every little bit helps us get this cult awareness content out there. Smash that subscribe button. You know you want to. Okay, everyone, that was Douglas Brooks, an attorney and legal advocate for people who've been screwed over by MLM schemes. Be sure to check out the full episode from way back in season 1 of A Little Bit Culty. He's got some good wisdom in there.
And be sure to not join an MLM, okay? And maybe even think twice about supporting your friend with that very special product that you can only get from her. That might not be true.
And if you have, check out alittlebitculty.com/resources for some info on how to get yourself on out of that shit. You can do it. We've been there, and we promise you it's going to be okay.
More all-new episodes of A Little Bit Culty coming your way soon. Thanks for listening, and please stay on Culty, okay?
Okay.
Okay. The end.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're heading over to patreon.com/alittlebitculty now to discuss this episode. In the meantime, dear listener, please remember, this podcast is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for real medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. For cult recovery resources and to learn more about seeking safely in this culty world, check out alittlebitculty.com/culty resources, and don't miss Sarah's TED Talk called How Cult Literate Are You? Great stuff.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound and our co-creator and show chaplain/bodyguard, Jess Tardy. Our show writer is Holly Zadra, and our theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant.